After a while, plates started to empty and the conversation slowed, the easy buzz of breakfast winding down into the quiet clicks of forks against empty plates. Mom stood up, gathering the dishes with a soft clatter, stacking them carefully so nothing chipped.
"Go on,"
she said with a smile, waving her hand at the rest of us.
"I've got this."
Dad wiped his hands on a napkin and stood up, stretching his arms above his head with a groan.
"I'm gonna go get dressed real quick,"
he said, ruffling my hair lightly as he passed. I watched him head up the stairs, his robe trailing behind him, bare feet creaking on the old steps. I heard the faint sound of their bedroom door opening down the hall. I wandered into the living room and plopped down on the couch. It was soft, the kind of soft that swallowed you a little when you sat down. The cushions were deep and overstuffed, the fabric worn smooth from years of use. I pulled my knees up and hugged them to my chest, letting the room wrap around me like a safe place. Mr. Harlan followed me in, leaning against the door frame with an easy smile on his face.
"Hey, kiddo,"
he said, patting something tucked under his arm.
"Brought you something."
I looked up, curious. He pulled out a smaller axe, not a toy, but real, just scaled down to fit someone my size. The handle was smooth, polished wood, and the blade had a leather cover strapped tightly over it.
"Figured you might want your own,"
he said, holding it out toward me.
"Little lighter, little easier to handle."
I stared at it for a second, surprised, and then smiled. Really smiled. Feeling a warm flutter pushed the heaviness in my chest aside for a little while. "Thank you," I said, my voice a little small but full of real happiness. He winked and gave the couch arm a little tap with his knuckles before heading back toward the kitchen to grab his jacket. And for a little while, sitting there holding the small axe across my lap, I let myself pretend everything was normal. I let myself forget about the thing in the hallway, forget about the breathing, forget about the prince that had vanished. Footsteps creaked on the stairs again, and Dad appeared dressed in jeans and an old gray flannel shirt, tugging a jacket on as he walked. He leaned down and kissed Mom on the cheek as she dried her hands with a towel.
"Don't work too hard,"
she said, smiling at him.
"You know me,"
Dad said with a grin, grabbing the small pile of gloves and tools Mr. Harlan had stacked near the door. The three of us, me, Dad, and Mr. Harlan, headed outside, stepping into the cool morning air. Mr. Harlan's house stood just across the wide, grassy stretch behind ours, the only other house close enough to see from our backyard. His place looked older, a little rough around the edges, with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. But it felt lived in, solid and real, like the kind of house that had stories in its walls. We made our way across the grass toward the big old woodshed that leaned against the side of his house. Dad whistled low under his breath, looking around.
"You've kept this place up nice,"
he said, reaching out to thump the wood siding with his palm. Mr. Harlan grinned, adjusting the axe he carried over his shoulder.
"Not bad for an old guy, huh?"
Dad laughed.
Yeah.
He said, shaking his head.
"I always had my eye on this place, you know. Way before we started moving in."
Mr. Harlan's smile softened a little as he glanced back at our house.
"I'm just glad you're here."
He said,
"Beats the hell out of the last guy who lived there. Never thought I'd get lucky enough to have my best friend right across the way."
Dad clapped him on the back, the sound sharp and full of something deep and true, the kind of friendship that doesn't need a lot of words. I hugged the small axe closer to my chest, feeling a little spark of happiness flicker under the blanket of fear that still hung quietly around my heart. And for now, it was enough.